Hello! It's arrived at last! The final day. The final 2 chapters. I can't believe it. The journey seems to have gone so quickly. The days have rattled by, haven't they? I really hope you've enjoyed watching these videos, getting a flavour for what goes through the mind of an author when he's putting together a story and telling a story. I mean, the inspiration for these stories really are my 2 children, Zach and Samuel, and I've been making up stories for them ever since they were born. When they were young, they didn't give any response at all to what I was saying. Yeah, that kind of thing. But as they grew a little bit older, they began to contribute to the stories, and they've been an amazing help to me. When I've been reading, I would always read a chapter of these books to them every night when they were growing up, and they would chip in. Sometimes I get a name wrong, or I would have someone leaving a house when they had already left the house, and they would pick that up instantly. They're as sharp as a razor. So it's been an absolute pleasure working with them and reading to them, and they have been a huge help to me in ending up with the finished books. So I've selected 2 of the emails today from the many that have come in. And the first one is from Simon, and Simon says, Anthony, will you be coming back to my school in, I see, you're in Clonakilty, which is in a beautiful part of Cork. If ever you get the opportunity to go, there's some fantastic beaches down there. It's just an amazing place to go on holidays. I'm down to come back and see you in October, all being well, fingers crossed. So I look forward to seeing you then. And the second question that I have down here is, I'm having great trouble writing. This is from Brad. Brad says, I'm having great trouble writing. I get stuck at the start and find it really, really difficult to do. Have you any tips? I do. There's a thing called writer's block, which for professionals, I mean, it can be really, really difficult. It means you sit in front of a blank sheet of paper and time tick, 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 ticks by, and still you haven't got any work done. So I mean, if you're being paid by the word tick, tick, and you're not producing any words, then that can be very, very difficult. I haven't experienced it myself, but I have a solution for you if you do have it. Here's what I suggest you. Take a blank sheet of paper, and for 1 minute set an alarm on your phone or an alarm on your clock, and for 1 minute just write. Don't worry about punctuation, don't worry about commas, full stops, don't worry about what you're writing. Just write. Do not lift your pen up except when you reach the end of a line to go back to the next line. Don't worry about anything else. Just write for a minute and then stop. And when you sit down to write then after that, you'll be able to write perfectly well. It works really, really well. It's used by professionals in the industry. So try that. It's a simple little trick, but it'll work for you. So it's time. Here we are when we left Maria and her friends. Maria was, we suspect, inside Bessborough House. Her friends are just about to step inside. So let's see what happens in the final 2 chapters. Helen, Vinny and Spencer threw open the doors to the grand hall, and they slammed behind them. Sitting in the centre of the room was Maria in a cage. It seemed to be protected by beams of light. "Got here okay?" Maria said casually. Her father began to run towards her. "Stop that!" Maria urged. "Touch the cage and an electric charge will run through your body and you'll be killed where you stand." "What are we to do?" Spencer implored. Vinny was already looking around the room open-mouthed. On 3 of the walls was a series of oddly shaped clocks and a fob watch, with ants scurrying across it, which looked uncannily real. Does this ring a bell with any of you? There was also a giant dead tree painted on another wall, with some cliffs in the background and a metal bar in the distance. It's a room dedicated to the persistence of memory by Salvador Dali. The painting Miss Kern showed us in class, said Maria. I've got a lot more out of looking at it here than I did in class. There's a red button over there beside the only working clock. I'm guessing the secret is to set the hands of the clock to the right time and the cage will open. You're right, said Vinny, looking closely at the clock. But you only have 10 seconds to set it to the right time. If you don't, it will shoot out a burst of electricity which will kill us all. Can't we find the picture on the internet? There's no mobile phone coverage in here, said Vinny, peering at his iPhone, and the doors of the hall are electronically sealed shut. We can't escape unless we solve the puzzle. I'm afraid I've never seen this painting before, Spencer said. Maria, what do you remember when you saw it first? The story about Dali and the cheese, said Maria. When I got home, I looked at the painting on the internet, but I only noticed the 2 clocks which didn't have the time set. I'm drawn to the unusual and don't pay attention to the ordinary. What were you thinking about when you saw the picture, Vinny? I was thinking how awesome it would be for time to stand still. I would sit beside the dead tree singing, New York, New York, so good they named it twice. And the crowds would cheer as the tree began to flower and come back to life. Helen, can you be any more helpful? Said Spencer in bewilderment. I hardly looked at the painting, but I remember listening to what the other children saw and thinking how different eyes see different things. She paused before continuing. Someone asked why the tree was dead, and someone else asked what the ants were doing on the watch. I also remember thinking how lucky it is I live close to the school, because poor old Paula has to get up at the crack of dawn to be here. Helen's eyes began to sparkle as she realised she had solved the conundrum. Paula said the clock was set to the time she hated most in the morning, the time she gets up to school every day, 5 to 7, Helen declared triumphantly. Are you sure? Said Spencer. Sure enough to risk 1,000,000 volts travelling through our bodies? It's not the voltage, it's the current which kills you, Vinny corrected. Spencer rolled his eyes to heaven. Helen, we trust you, said Maria. If you believe it is 5 to 7, go for it. Helen stepped forward and started to move the hands of the clock, and as she did so, lights started to flash and a voice started to count down. 10, 9, 8... Hurry, said Maria. 7, 6, 5, 4. Press the red button when you're done, Spencer urged. I know, said Helen. 3, 2. Helen reached out with her right hand and pressed the button. The laser beams flickered for a moment and the bars to the cage lifted. Helen, Vinny and Spencer ran towards Maria and all 4 of them embraced. Something we could only dream of doing nowadays. Let's get out of here, said Spencer, and they flung open the front door and started to run down the driveway. As they climbed into the hearse, they heard the 2 policemen in the background singing, Pat a cake, baker's man, bake me a cake as fast as you can. Pat it and shake it and mark it with B and bake it in the oven for baby and me. 1 chapter left. 1. I know you both think my dad hits me. Look, Helen, I wanted to apologise for, began Maria, but Helen held her finger out to silence Maria. Just listen, she insisted. I only want to talk about this once. It's not Dad who hits me. It's Mum. My dad can't handle it, so he goes out drinking. And every time I get hit, Dad buys me something to ease his guilt and shame. But today it ends. I will speak to my dad, and together we will make sure Mum gets help. If I need you, I will call, but I would prefer if you kept this to yourselves. Without saying a word, Maria put her arms round her best friend. As the ferry pulled away, from the shore towards home, the adrenaline began to drain from their bodies. Spencer's eyes had heavy rings around them, and Helen and Vinny were both fast asleep at the back of the hearse. "Dad, someone has died in the last couple of days," Maria asked. "Yes, I finished doing the embalming last night, but no buts. We've only got 4 days left. I know whoever it is has a dying wish. They had their hands extended towards me and their eyes were open. So I plan to put my hands on them later today and see what their wish is. Now, I'm exhausted, so I'm going to close my eyes for a few moments." Half an hour later, Spencer arrived home. He glanced across the road at the gloomy graveyard and the stern church as he parked up. With a hint of moonlight and dark shadows, it looked to Spencer like a good setting for a horror movie. He smiled to himself as he carried each of the children in turn, who were all asleep, into his bungalow. He put Maria on top of her bed and put a blanket over her. Then he carried Helen into the spare bedroom, and finally he made a bed for Vinny on the couch. It was 8 hours later before they rose from their slumber, and Maria was angry her father had not woken her earlier. "We have lost precious time, which we could have been using to work on the last wish," Maria said. "Please don't use this body," Spencer urged. "I don't think you realize this man has..." "Is there someone else in the embalming room?" Maria interrupted. "No," her father replied meekly. "Then we have no choice. We can't wait around for someone else. We've got to use this person," Maria said, as they looked down at the body. Helen and Vinny seemed a bit more hesitant. "I recognize him from somewhere. Is he a celebrity?" Helen asked. "I think he was in the papers or in the news," Vinny replied. "We have no time for dilly-dallying," said Maria, and she raised her arms aloft confidently. She placed them deep into the man's chest. As the meep of the text sounded, the corners of the dead man's mouth almost seemed to turn up into a flicker of a smile. "I've got a bad feeling about this," said Helen. "I've been trying to tell you," Spencer said. "It's William Mullins. His son Mark is in your school." Remember, he was the boy who was bullying everyone. "William died in a car accident after being released last week from prison. For murder." Maria bit her lip. "It's possible his last wish is something good, isn't it?" she said despairingly. "Maybe he wants to make amends?" "There's only one way to find out," Helen replied, and Maria pressed play on her mobile phone. On screen they saw the inside of a photo booth, but this time the shadowy figure sat down in front of the camera so that Spencer and the children could see his face clearly. "How delicious," he said in a deep, rasping voice. "I'm surprised to hear from you, Maria. I hear you have not been very nice to my son. But now you have got in touch, I'll tell you what I want." He leaned forward and spoke slowly and clearly into the camera. "For my last wish, I want you to take my..." That's it. Don't believe me? "For my last wish, I want you to take my..." ends. And what is his last wish? I hear you cry. I hear you wave your fists. His last wish is revealed in a later book. Get hold of one of the books and you'll find out. Can't tell you. That'd be unfair. You need to have a look at the book to see what happens. So listen, on a serious note, I really have enjoyed recording these sessions. I hope you've enjoyed listening to them. It's been great fun. If you want to get hold of one of the books, it really is easy. All you have to do is go on to amazon.co.uk, and where they have a big window up at the top, type in Gravespeakers, Gravespeakers, and all the books will come up in their various options, whether you want to buy a paperback book like this one, or whether you want to buy a version for the Kindle, or there is even an audio version, so you can hear me again speaking to you in a recorded version of one of the books. But my main advice to you is keep reading. Whatever book it is your parents find you with late at night, and you're reading, in my case, I used to read by flashlight under the duvet. About 2 o'clock in the morning, my parents would burst into the room and say, "Are you not asleep?" And they take the book off me. Whatever that book is, where you keep reading chapter after chapter and you just can't put it down, write like that. That is the secret to success. Imitate the way that that person writes. Use your own voice to tell the story, but use the same techniques that they do to help it make it exciting. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that your school will have me as a visitor soon, and you'll be able to say that you saw me on video and you'll be able to meet me in person. So I look forward one way or another to seeing you in person. And if you do get hold of one of the books, do drop me a line, Anthony@confidentpresenting.com, and let me know what you think.